Here's a comment from Demetrius on Facebook. He said, Democrats actually support policies of the neocons. We shouldn't pretend there's a significant difference between the Republicans and the Democrats who serve big banks, big corporations. I disagree. Yeah. I disagree in the sense that, one, Hillary Clinton gives Wall Street speeches, takes Wall Street money, takes Wall Street, she's in league. She's not going to do anything to change the status quo. No. But you know what she wasn't going to do? Cut corporate taxes down to 15%. She wasn't going to go after Medicaid. Right now, we have Republicans who are looking to do $800 billion. Let's get the right number. $800 billion worth of cuts to Medicaid over the next 10 years. People try to make it seem as though, yes, there's a problem with the status quo. I have receipts for the last 2 years of doing this show outlining the problem with the status quo, but let's not pretend like there's nothing worse than the status quo. And that's the false choice that people are posing. They're trying to make it seem like there's nothing worse than the status quo. Therefore, we should not complain so much about Republicans versus Democrats. Well, actually, there is something worse than the status quo. You know what's worse than the status quo? You know what's worse than the status quo Justice Department? Is a Justice Department with Jeff Sessions at the helm, right, who's intentionally targeting minorities, who's intentionally doing policies or enacting policies that are going to, in a draconian fashion, hurt the black community and in marginalized communities in general. I mean, the status quo, don't get me wrong, Eric Holder's Justice Department, I have a list of problems with them. Sure. But what Jeff Sessions is doing is by far worse. And so even though the status quo sucks, Donald Trump and the Republicans have shown us exactly how the status quo can become worse.
Yeah, no, I mean, for those of us who have a certain level of Marxist leaning, then there is something persuasive about the comment insofar as the fundamental system and its injustices are not going to change.
You're being nicer than me. We could have done that, but okay, go ahead.
We'll start with that.
Okay.
Though, right? This is true. But that's about the fundamental system. That's not about the lived lives of people who, suffer the immediate moment.
Right.
Right. That's thinking in terms of vanguard revolutionary ideas. So far as I'm concerned, I think it's good to have those on the mind, the long-term goals that you have. It depends what you're willing to sacrifice in the meantime. Right, and saying that Jeff Sessions and Eric Holder are the same, right, is to sacrifice a lot of people's rights in the meantime.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, there is a worldview that says we need to play this very leftist, sort of traditional Marxist worldview that says we're going to play this for the real long run. That's what really matters. If you talk to somebody who is being targeted because they are a minority or somebody whose rights are being directly threatened today, that's a pretty flaccid argument, right? The idea that in the long run, this.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem I have with that. I agree with the overall sentiment that that we have to play a long game. Right. I agree that the whole damn system. This is the saying now, and I agree with it. The whole damn system is corrupt. However, here's where I have a problem with it. One, if you are not in a position to actually affect long-term changes, and you're saying we're going to play a long-term game, then you're really just running your mouth. You're not in a position to change anything. And what you've done is not only you're running your mouth, you're profiting off of not this commenter, but I know plenty of left-leaning, Marxist-leaning commentators and outfits that are making a career out of the long-term game, but they have not created any structured mechanism of changing it in the long run. And so at the expense of people who have to live in the here and now, they are able to just pontificate about where things can be if we just had this perfect utopian society that I agree we should get closer to it. We should fight tooth and nail. But if you don't have any structured way of doing it, you're just running your mouth at the expense. And the reason I keep emphasis on the structured way of doing it is because you're not going to overthrow America.
Hopefully not.
You're not.
There would be a lot of unintended consequences to such an idea.
Well, I just want to start there again. I mean, I'm here. I might as well keep going. You're not going to overthrow America. And if you're not going to overthrow America, that means you have to work through the system. And if you don't have any structures in place to work through the system, then you're really just wasting all of our time. And you're wasting our time at the expense of people who are the most exposed to it. Yes, I get the classic Marxist critique and the fundamental problem of our system. I get it probably better than most people in the conversation. However, I also am sober enough to know that if you're waiting on a revolution to change this country, they've got plenty of guns. We don't. And if we get guns, they've got tanks. We don't. If we get tanks, they have nukes. We don't. Game over. America is 100% capable of crushing any revolution that we think that we could put up. And so if we can't do it by violent overthrow, by violent revolution, we must work through the system. And if we're not in a position to work through the system, we're just running our mouth.
Yeah, no, I wish I could hot take back at you. And put, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that the question, if what we think is just is, whatever, a 95% tax on income over 500,000 or whatever, then we should think that 1% better towards that is good, right? That not just 95 or bust, right?
Right.
If it's 31 now, make it 32. Right, this is not vanguard revolutionary thinking, but that's I think the only I agreeing with your previous sentiments.
I just
or not dropping it, right? Not taking away the corporate tax, not taking away the
this goes back to the comment, and I think we have another comment to pull up on the screen. I don't know if it's ready yet, but when it's ready, pull it up. You're crazy, Ben. Hillary would definitely have cut corporate taxes. Let's talk about the differences, right? Would she have cut it down from 35% to 30%? I don't know. That wasn't in her policies.
I don't think so. Again, it's really easy because it didn't happen, right? So we don't say it. I mean, look, to me, the success of the Sanders campaign was that if Clinton had won, then she would have paid real prices for doing these sorts of things. People were going to be looking at it, right? People who were invested in her party would have been looking directly at it. I don't know what she would have done. I am sure that if Trump has his druthers, he will enact a cut that goes far beyond anything Clinton would have considered. And Clinton did not want to be on record cutting taxes for the rich, right? So could she have ducked around this way or that?
She actually proposed a tax hike.
I mean, I don't.
Not a significant one, but she proposed.
Right. I don't know what she would have done in the long run. I don't see any way to think that it could have been worse than what we have. And I had some faith in the possibility of an empowered Democratic Party that saw its left.
I mean,
wing.
I didn't have faith in the empowered Democratic Party.
No. Well, if she had won, to the extent that if you have somebody who has to listen to Bernie Sanders, just has to. Right, in order to move towards
yeah, but they've already shown that they're in a position now where they have to and they won't.
Well, they don't have to now because they don't have to do anything but talk about Trump.
This is true.
Right.
I guess that's the flip side. So you think that if in power they would have had to listen to Bernie?
I think so. I think for 2020 it would have been officially on the table. I don't know what the impact would have been, but there would have been a voice in the ear of the person making the decisions, or a set of voices in the ear. Right. I don't know what the outcome would have been, but now we have the opposite. Right now we have the opposite ear.
I disagree with you on that one because the Democratic Party has shown that even in the face of the reality that they lost to the Orange Mussolini, they still are ignoring Bernie Sanders, the one person that probably would have won. Bernie would have won.
We'll see.
I think this was but this actually underscores the bigger point. The bigger point is that if we're not creating structures as progressives to force that, to not just demand it, but force that, so that the Democratic Party has no choice but to acquiesce to demands of the progressive wing, or in the absence of a Democratic Party willing to work with the progressive wing, a third party that is actually viable. In the absence of those structures, we're just talking. We're just talking and we're just pontificating and we're constantly putting ourselves at the mercy of the same party that we complain about. And so to me, it's really about, do we have these structures? I think they're starting to form. I think they're starting to be created, but they're at the nascent stage. They're at the beginning stage. Even though some of these organizations have been around for generations, they're still fledgling in terms of numbers, influence, and reach. But again, back to the last comment, that there's absolutely nothing on record. You could go to her website and look. I mean, I actually compared Donald Trump's economic policies against Hillary Clinton's. I compared Hillary Clinton's side by side with Bernie Sanders, and Hillary Clinton's economic policy is far closer to Bernie Sanders than it was ever close to Donald Trump.
Well, that's kind of my. I think that's because of his presence to a significant extent, right? So when I say work with, I don't mean give any sort of legitimate power over to that progressive wing, but to nod to it, right? They want people like you saying what you just said.
What's
right? That if you compare Clinton to a Republican, she looks considerably more like Bernie, right?
On paper. Yeah.
Well, that's what. And if she were in office, the paper would become real to the extent that at least that first term you're trying to get reelected. I refuse to believe that there was going to be no impact from that. Right? It might have been very marginal. It might have been one little step, but as opposed to going in the bad direction.
I think this is the first time we just disagree on it.
Yeah, that's all right.
Cool.
I mean,
we agree all the time, but I don't think the Democratic Party, even in the face of a burning house, would ever get like Bernie could have a bucket of water, and they're on fire. Yeah. Like they would not. You know what's the saying? I wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. Yeah. They would not want Bernie Sanders to throw a bucket of water on them if they were on fire.
I agree. They wouuld want him credited for it. Right? Like, I agree that they would say that it was somebody else doing the pissing. But I think that I mean, the idea that there are votes there in the long run, I think.
But you saw, they would rather go, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, please.
It's my show. So
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
They would rather they went after Republicans. To the detriment of losing progressives. They've shown us exactly what they would do. Their votes on the table, they took
them for granted, though, right? So you might be right that insofar as it was required to lose it in order to realize to establish. Look, I'm not, but I want to be clear, right? I am not suggesting that we were on the way to any sort of
unified
social democracy utopia, right? I am simply saying that I believe there was gravity in the direction away from things like overtly and proudly cutting corporate taxes, right? That I think that gravity was established, and I use Bernie as sort of the planet around which that orbits.
Is there gravity?
It's not. Even if all it does is freeze things to a certain extent. I mean, we're all dealing in hypotheticals, right?
Yeah.
And
I don't know. Okay, we'll leave it there.